All right, welcome to our deep dive, into mastery. This book by Robert Greene.
The big one.
Yeah, it's pretty dense.
It's a really fascinating book, though.
Yeah, have you read it like cover to cover?
I have, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those books that, like, you kind of want to have next to your desk so you can just kind of, like, dip in and out of
Yes,
and
so
reference.
much in there.
It's packed so much in there.
So we're gonna try to, distill it down.
Yeah, give you the
Give you
the key.
yeah, the key takeaways. So you don't have to spend like, weeks reading this thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the cool things about this book is that, it is historical analysis, but it's also like really actionable advice. And
Yes.
it's not just about like, oh, work really hard. It's about working intelligently. It's about working strategically
Yes.
towards mastery.
And he lays out like a very clear path
He
that you
does.
can follow to get to mastery. And he starts with something that might not be that intuitive, which is like discovering your calling.
Yeah, finding it your life's task, as he calls it.
Yeah, okay. Discovering your calling, that sounds a little bit,
A little woohoo.
yeah.
Yeah.
But he calls it your life's task, and he means something very specific by that.
Yes. And it's not just, follow your bliss or like whatever makes you happy. It's really about finding that intersection between like your natural inclinations, your talents, and the impact you want to have on the world.
Yeah.
So it's really this kind of merging of the two.
So he's not saying like just, do whatever you feel like doing. It's like, what are you naturally good at, and what can you contribute to the world?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting is he says that a lot of times, like, the clues to what this life's task is are hidden in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
Like he says, think back to your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what activities did you totally lose yourself in?
Yes.
What were you really excited about as a kid?
Like what could you do for hours and not even notice the time passing?
Yeah, yeah. Even if it wasn't something that, you were like, quote unquote, supposed to be good at,
Right.
you know?
Right. And oftentimes those early passions
Right.
are like a key to your natural talents
Yeah.
and inclinations.
So instead of like shutting that down as we get older,
Right.
we should be paying more attention to that.
Exactly.
Wow. He says so many people, choose a path for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Money,
It-
status,
yeah.
pressure from their parents.
Yeah.
It's
Or just like, it seems like
the
the
safe option.
yeah, the safe or the easy option. And then, that leads to a lot of, unfulfillment later in life.
Right. You get to a certain point, you're like, wait a minute, I've been doing all this stuff for all these wrong reasons, and I'm not actually happy.
Yeah. And it can be really hard to course correct at that
In the
point.
end, yeah.
He uses a really powerful example, the story of Buckminster Fuller,
Oh, yeah. Great example.
the architect and inventor.
Yeah.
Fuller was actually contemplating suicide.
Yeah.
He was feeling completely lost in his life.
Totally directionless.
And he had this moment on the shores of Lake Michigan where,
This pivotal moment.
yeah, he describes it as like hearing a voice saying like, trust your own experience.
It's your own intuition
Yeah.
and dedicate your life to something bigger than yourself.
And Greene uses that as an example of like tuning into your inner compass.
Yes.
Learning to trust your own instincts, even when they go against conventional wisdom.
Yeah, like that inner voice that
Yeah.
is often drowned out by all the noise of the world.
Yeah, all the shoulds. All,
Now the shoulds, yeah.
you know,
Yeah. And Fuller, of course, went on to do amazing things. He created the geodesic dome,
yeah, yeah.
became a renowned thinker.
Yeah, he's like one of the, he's considered one of like the great,
Yeah.
thinkers of our time.
Visionaries.
And he did it because he aligned himself with that, inner drive.
The inner calling.
Yeah.
Yes.
So finding your life's task isn't like a one-time event.
No, it's an ongoing
It's an ongoing journey.
exploration.
Yeah, and it can evolve over time.
It can.
Like Leonardo da Vinci started as an artist,
Right.
but he blended all these different skills
Yeah, art engineering and
to create this path that was totally unique.
totally unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it can be this kind of like winding path.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be like this straight line.
No, it's more organic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that leads us to kind of the next stage, which is the apprenticeship phase.
Okay.
This is where you start to build the skills and the knowledge that you need to actually fulfill that life's task.
Yeah.
And the goal here is not just like material gain or success. It's really a deeper transformational of your mind.
Oh, we're seeing a theme here. It's not just about doing, it's about being.
Becoming, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about who you become in the process.
Yes, and he's really adamant about finding a mentor
Yes.
and submitting to their authority.
To their authority.
For the sake of like rapid learning.
Yes.
So
Like,
that-
why waste time trying to figure it out yourself when someone else has already been there, done that?
Yeah.
It can give you the shortcut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's about, like, humility, too.
It is about
You know,
humility.
admitting that you don't know everything.
Yeah, and being willing to learn from someone who's more experienced.
Yeah, he uses a really good example, Michael Faraday,
Oh, great example.
who began as a bookbinder's apprentice, but went on to become one of the most important scientists of the 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
And Faraday was fascinating because he basically taught himself chemistry and electricity by, like, meticulously recreating experiments that he had read about.
Yeah, just devouring knowledge.
Yeah, he was super self-motivated,
Very much so.
but then he managed to secure this apprenticeship with Humphrey Davy,
Yes.
who was like the leading chemist of the time.
Mm-hmm. One of them, at least.
Yeah, and Faraday's story shows how drive and mentorship can work together.
Absolutely.
You know, like he had the drive.
He had that internal fire
Yes, but the apprenticeship gave him the structure and the guidance.
to really refine that raw talent
Yeah.
into something truly brilliant.
And he actually ended up making his own groundbreaking discoveries.
Yes, surpassing even his mentor.
Yeah, he went beyond his mentor.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Greene breaks down the apprenticeship phase into 3 key steps.
Okay.
First, you have deep observation.
Okay.
And he says you need to become like an anthropologist studying an alien culture.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, you know, paying close attention to the rules of the game in your chosen field.
And not just the formal rules.
Yeah, like the procedures, the technical skills.
Right, but also the unwritten rules, the social dynamics, the power structures.
Yeah, like the politics of it all.
The politics, yeah, all the unspoken things.
Okay, so he's saying, like, you need to be really observant. You need to be paying attention to
Everything.
Yeah.
Not just the surface level stuff.
Yeah, so give me an example of that. Like, let's say you find yourself in a really dysfunctional workplace,
Oh, okay, yeah.
right? Instead of immediately trying to change things, what should you do doing?
So instead of coming in as the bull in the china shop trying to change everything right away,
Right.
you want to understand the existing dynamics as much as you might hate them or be frustrated by them.
Yeah.
Understand why things are the way they are,
Yeah.
who actually holds the power,
Yeah.
what motivates these people.
Yeah.
Because if you come in and you don't understand that you're going to make a lot of mistakes.
So it's like doing reconnaissance before you make any moves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're building a mental map of the territory before you try to navigate it.
That's really different from just like, you know, diving in and being like, oh, I'll figure it out as I go.
Yeah. That's a recipe for disaster often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you're observing.
You're going to start to see patterns
Okay.
and inconsistencies that you might have missed before.
Yeah.
Like somebody that you initially perceive as really powerful
Yeah.
might actually be quite weak.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa. Yeah.
Right.
And understanding that is crucial for navigating the next steps.
Okay, so that's deep observation. What's the next step?
Skill acquisition. So this goes beyond just reading a book or watching a tutorial.
Yep.
Greene is talking about deep practice, putting yourself to the point where the skill becomes almost intuitive.
Yes.
And he uses a great example, Bill Bradley, the famous basketball player.
Okay.
So Bradley was not naturally gifted.
Oh, so he wasn't just like.
He wasn't like the
Yeah.
He wasn't.
Yeah.
He developed incredible skill through this like relentless, targeted practice.
I've heard about his training regimen. It was legendary.
Legendary.
Like spending hours and hours and hours.
Dribbling, shooting footwork drills just over and over and over.
Like, why that extreme of an approach?
So it wasn't just about building endurance.
Okay.
It was about transforming his mind
Oh, wow.
as much as his body.
Interesting.
So Greene's point is that deep practice is about pushing past that initial frustration,
Yeah, that resistance.
the resistance that you have,
that.
and entering this flow state where the skill becomes almost second nature.
Yes.
And Bradley understood that, like, to excel, he couldn't just rely on some talent he didn't have. He had to forge it through sheer willpower.
Yeah.
And that meant confronting discomfort head on.
So it's not about avoiding the pain of practice.
No.
It's about leaning into it.
Leaning into the discomfort.
Yeah.
Because that's where the growth happens.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And the final stage of the apprenticeship.
Experimenting and failing.
Okay, this is like so counterintuitive.
It is, but Greene argues that failure is an essential part of the learning process.
Yeah.
And he gives the example of Henry Ford,
Okay.
whose early attempts at building a car were riddled with failures.
Of course, yeah.
But each failure revealed a flaw in his design or his process,
Okay.
which led him to refine his approach,
Yes.
until he eventually achieved success with the Model T.
So it's not about like being afraid to fail. It's about seeing failure as information.
Yes.
Like if something doesn't work, don't just give up and say, oh, well, I'm a failure.
Right.
It's like, oh, what can I learn from this?
What can I learn? What can I adjust? What can I tweak
Yeah.
to make it better next time?
So we've got the discovering year called the apprenticeship phase,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still more to mastery. than just like technical skill, right?
Absolutely.
Greene seems to be saying that mastery isn't just about what you do like in isolation. It's about how you interact with the world around you.
It's about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's next on this journey?
Mastering the social world.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because Greene argues that this is just as crucial as mastering your craft.
Okay.
No matter how brilliant you are, you're going to be working with other people. You're going to be navigating complex social dynamics.
Yeah.
You're going to have to deal with politics, power struggles, all of that stuff.
Yeah, the human element.
The human element, exactly.
Yeah.
And he has some very specific ideas about how to approach this.
Okay, I'm ready for it. Mastering the social world, that sounds both daunting and necessary. I mean, no one achieves mastery in a vacuum, right?
You're absolutely right. It's all about understanding the dynamics of human interaction. And Greene's point is that a lot of times we approach social situations with what he calls the naive perspective.
Okay, naive in what sense?
Well, we tend to see people through this lens of our own emotions and needs. Like we project our own insecurities and biases onto them.
So it's like we're not really seeing them for who they are.
Exactly. We're seeing them through this filter of our own stuff.
And how does that affect our ability to, interact with them effectively?
Well, it makes it really hard to truly understand their motivations or predict their actions, because we're not really seeing them clearly.
It's like we're trying to read a map, but the map is constantly changing.
Yes, and the map is actually a reflection of ourselves.
Oh, wow. Okay, so how do we move beyond this naive perspective? How do we actually develop, genuine social intelligence?
Well, Greene offers 4 strategies, and the first is learning to decode the deep signals that people emit.
Okay, decode the deep signals. What does that mean?
So it's like, their words might say one thing, but their body language, their tone of voice, their actions might tell a completely different story.
Oh, so it's about paying attention to those inconsistencies.
Exactly. You got to look beyond the surface.
So it's like becoming a human lie detector.
In a way, yes, but it's not about, going around accusing people of lying.
Right.
It's more about, understanding what's really motivating them.
So reading between the lines.
Exactly. Seeing what's beneath the surface.
Okay, that's decoding deep signals. What's the next strategy?
Thinking inside your enemy.
Okay, whoa, hold on now. We're not talking about, actual enemies here.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. I mean, unless you actually have enemies, which some people do.
Okay.
But Greene's talking more about anyone that you might have difficulty interacting with.
So it could be like a colleague or a boss or...
Yeah, a family member even.
Yeah, anyone who pushes your buttons.
Anyone who you find challenging to deal with, and the key here is to try to see the world from their perspective.
To understand why they do what they do.
Exactly. Like, what are their motivations? What are their fears? What are their insecurities?
Okay, because once you understand that, then you can...
Then you can start to figure out how to deal with them more effectively.
So it's not about manipulation?
No.
It's about empathy.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
He gives a great example of this Benjamin Franklin.
Oh yeah, I love Benjamin Franklin.
So Franklin had this rivalry with this guy named Isaac Norris.
Another founding father.
Yeah, they were both politicians in Pennsylvania, and Franklin realized that Norris really craved attention and admiration.
Okay.
And so he used that knowledge to his advantage.
How so?
Well, he found out that Norris had this prized book collection.
Okay.
And he strategically asked to borrow a very rare volume.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, and by doing that, he basically flattered Norris's ego and disarmed him, and then Franklin was able to get Norris's support on this important political matter.
So it's about understanding the psychology of the other person.
Understanding what makes them tick.
And using that knowledge to create a more, harmonious relationship.
Exactly.
Okay, that's thinking inside your enemy. What's the third strategy?
Practicing detachment.
Detachment, wait, isn't social intelligence about connecting with people?
It is, but Greene's point is that a lot of times we cloud our judgment by getting too emotionally invested in our interactions.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like we get caught up in our own feelings, our own needs.
And then we can't see things clearly.
Exactly.
So detachment is about taking a step back.
Taking a step back, taking a deep breath.
Trying to see the situation objectively.
Exactly.
So it doesn't mean becoming cold and uncaring.
No, it's about separating your emotional reactions from your strategic thinking.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got decoding deep signals, thinking inside your enemy, practicing detachment. What's the final strategy for developing social intelligence?
Resisting conformity.
Okay, resisting conformity? That sounds pretty straightforward, but how does that relate to social intelligence?
Well, Greene argues that conformity can lead to groupthink.
Oh yeah, groupthink. That's dangerous.
It can be very dangerous because it stifles creativity and innovation.
Right, because everyone's just going along with the crowd.
Exactly, and you don't get any new ideas, you don't get any critical thinking.
And he outlines 3 main dangers of conformity.
Okay, let's hear them.
The law of least effort, the power of the group, and self-obsessiveness.
Oh, those are good ones.
So the law of least effort sounds familiar. Is this this like something they teach in physics class?
Not exactly, but it is a universal principle, I think.
Okay.
Green is saying that as humans, we tend to take the path of least resistance. It's easier to just follow the crowd, conform to the norms,
Right.
than to think for ourselves.
Because it takes less energy.
Exactly.
But what's the problem with that?
Well, it can lead to stagnation. If you're always doing what's easy, what's expected, you're not challenging yourself to grow.
Right.
You're not thinking
You're
differently.
just kind of on autopilot.
Exactly.
Okay, so we need to resist that urge to just go with the flow and be willing to, carve our own path.
Be a little bit rebellious.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the power of the group?
So Green emphasizes how powerful groups are in shaping our thoughts and
Oh, yeah,
behaviors.
for sure.
We all want to be accepted. We want to belong.
We're social creatures.
Exactly. And so we tend to conform to the norms and values of the group, even if we disagree with them.
This reminds me of those experiments they do where they have people deliberately give the wrong answer.
Oh, yeah, the Ash conformity experiment.
Yes, just to fit in with the group.
It's amazing how easily we can be swayed by social pressure.
It's kind of scary, actually.
It is.
And it's not just about, silly experiments.
No.
Greene gives some pretty sobering examples of how groupthink has led to, disastrous decisions.
Yeah, like the Challenger space shuttle disaster.
Oh, wow.
Or the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Yeah, these are major historical events.
Yeah, and those are extreme examples, but you can see how this plays out in everyday life, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's easy to get caught up in the group mentality,
Mm-hmm.
to go along with things, even when you have doubts.
Yeah, and it takes courage to stand up to the group,
To be the lone voice.
to be the dissenting voice.
Yeah,
But Green argues that this is essential for achieving mastery.
okay.
You can't innovate, you can't create something truly unique if you're always trying to please everyone else.
You just get watered down.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, so we've got the law of least effort to power the group. What about this third danger of conformity self-obsessiveness?
So Green argues that in today's culture, we're constantly bombarded with messages that encourage us to focus on ourselves.
Our needs, our desires.
Our image, our brand.
It's all about me, me, me.
Exactly. And he says this can lead to a lack of empathy,
Oh, yeah,
a distorted view of reality.
because you're so focused on your own little world that
Exactly.
you lose sight of the bigger picture.
And the needs of others.
Yeah.
And ultimately, he says this leads to a diminished capacity for genuine connection.
Because you're not really seeing the other person.
Right, you're just seeing a reflection of yourself.
So it's like we're so busy curating our online personas
Yeah,
that we forget to actually connect with real human beings.
in the real world,
Yeah.
face to face.
And Greene suggests that the antidote to this self-obsession is cultivating empathy.
Yes, empathy is crucial.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we cultivate empathy in a world that's so, me-focused?
Well, it's about stepping outside of our own narrow perspective
Okay,
and trying to see the world through the eyes of others.
so putting ourselves in their shoes.
Exactly. It's about understanding their motivations, their fears, their desires, even if they're different from our own.
That's a tall order sometimes.
It is, but it's essential for building meaningful relationships.
Okay, so to recap, Greene's 4 strategies for developing social intelligence are decoding the deep signals people emit, thinking inside your enemy, practicing detachment, and resisting conformity.
Those are the 4 pillars.
Yeah, these are all really powerful tools, but how does this social intelligence actually help us achieve mastery?
Well, Greene argues that by developing this keen understanding of human nature, we can avoid unnecessary conflicts.
Okay,
We can build strong alliances.
so it's about working with people, not
Exactly.
against them.
Exactly. And we can navigate the political landscape with grace and skill.
So it's not about being manipulative.
No.
It's about being savvy.
Being strategic.
Okay?
Yeah. And ultimately, we become more effective collaborators, communicators, and leaders.
So it's not just about getting ahead, it's about creating win-win situations.
Exactly.
Understanding that our success is often intertwined with the success of others.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by cultivating social intelligence, you free up more time and energy to focus on what matters most.
Developing your skills and achieving your goals.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground discovering calling the apprenticeship phase and now mastering the social world. What's next on this journey to mastery?
Well, the next stage is all about unlocking creative thinking
Okay.
and developing what Greene calls the dimensional mind.
Dimensional mind? That sounds exciting.
It is. This is where things get really interesting.
Dimensional mind, okay. I'm intrigued. It sounds almost like, a superpower. What exactly does Greene mean by this?
It's a way of thinking that's not limited by the conventional. Like he says, it combines that childlike curiosity with all the knowledge and experience that you've accumulated over time.
So you're not losing that like sense of wonder as you become more of an expert.
Exactly. You're retaining that openness to new ideas.
So it's the opposite of getting stuck in a rut, becoming so set in your ways that you just stop seeing new possibilities.
Right. It's about staying flexible, adaptable.
Yeah, Greene contrasts the dimensional mind with what he calls the conventional mind.
Yeah, the conventional mind is kind of like stuck in those familiar patterns, resistant to change.
And it makes me think about how kids are always asking why.
Right. They're naturally curious about everything.
But then somewhere along the way, a lot of us lose that curiosity. We become more concerned with like appearing knowledgeable, having the right answers.
And that can be a real barrier to creativity.
Yeah, because you're not willing to like question things or explore new ideas.
Right. Greene uses a good example, Buckminster Fuller.
Oh yeah, him again.
Yeah, well, he was known for his playful experimental approach to design.
So he was always pushing the boundaries.
Exactly. Always trying new things, even when people thought he was crazy.
His motto was, "Dare to be naive."
I love that.
Yeah, he believed that approaching problems with that fresh perspective, unburdened by conventional wisdom, was the key to innovation. That's really inspiring. So how do we cultivate this dimensional mind?
Greene outlines 3 steps.
Okay, lay them on me.
The first is think in reverse.
Okay, think in reverse. What does that mean?
He encourages us to look for anomalies, those things that don't fit the existing paradigm that challenge our assumptions.
So it's like when you encounter something and you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense.
Right, and instead of just dismissing it, you lean into that dissonance.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he uses the example of Charles Darwin,
Oh yeah, Darwin.
whose observations of extinct species, challenged the prevailing idea that all life had been created at once.
So he was going against the grain.
Yeah, he was willing to question the accepted wisdom.
And that led to his theory of evolution.
Exactly.
Now, so thinking in reverse is about being willing to challenge the status quo, to look for evidence that contradicts what we think we know.
Yeah, to be open to new possibilities.
Okay, what's the second step?
Look for what is missing.
Look for what's missing. I mean, that sounds a little cryptic.
It does, but it's about paying attention to negative cues, the things that should be present but aren't.
Okay, give me an example.
Think of Sherlock Holmes. In Silver Blaze, he solves the case by noticing that the dog didn't bark.
The dog didn't bark.
Right.
During the night of the crime.
Which not that the culprit was someone the dog knew.
Oh, wow, that's so clever.
Right.
Because everyone else was focused on like what was there.
Right.
And he just focused on what wasn't there.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It's about training yourself to see not just what is there, but what isn't.
Okay, so thinking critically, looking beyond the surface.
Yeah, don't just accept things at face value.
Okay, what's the third step?
Engage in creative breakthroughs.
Oh, yeah.
So Greene argues that true creativity often involves a tension between initial excitement and later doubts.
Yeah, you have that amazing idea, you're so excited, and then you start to see all the challenges and the self-doubt creeps in.
Exactly. And he says that to navigate that tension, you need to allow for periods of incubation and insight.
So you don't give up when you hit those roadblocks.
Right. You trust the process.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And that brings us to the final stage of Greene's path to mastery.
Achieving mastery itself.
This is it. This is the culmination of everything.
It is, yeah.
So finding your calling, the apprenticeship, mastering the social world, developing the dimensional mind. It sounds pretty epic.
It is, and Greene makes it very clear that mastery is not a destination.
It's a journey.
It's a journey. It's an ongoing process.
You never really arrive.
You're always evolving.
He describes the feeling of mastery as having this like deep intuitive grasp of your field combined with like rational processes.
Right. It's like this beautiful blend of intuition and intellect.
So you're able to see connections and patterns that other people miss.
And respond to situations with incredible speed and accuracy.
It's like you're in the flow.
Exactly. You become one with your craft.
He uses the example of like a master craftsman, working effortlessly.
Their movements are so fluid, so precise.
Years of practice have like ingrained the skills into their very being.
It's beautiful to watch.
But Greene also emphasizes that mastery isn't just about technical skill.
Right? It's about integrating all that you've learned, both intellectually and emotionally.
So it's about becoming a more whole, complete person.
Yeah, it's about connecting to something larger than yourself.
He talks about the importance of embracing slowness and depth over like rushing towards a goal.
Yeah, quality over quantity.
He uses the example of Santiago Calatrava, the architect,
Yeah.
who's known for his stunning organic designs.
He really takes his time.
Yeah, he allows his projects to evolve slowly.
He draws inspiration from nature.
So it's about trusting the process even when it feels slow or uncertain.
Yeah, not forcing things.
And that requires patience,
It does.
which can be a real challenge in a world that values speed and efficiency.
It's a different way of thinking about success.
Yeah, mastery is not about getting to the finish line first.
Right.
It's about enjoying the journey.
It's about the process of growth and discovery.
And ultimately, it's about making a meaningful contribution to the world.
Using your unique skills and talents to make a difference.
This has been an incredible deep dive into mastery. It's given me a whole new perspective on what it means to truly excel at something. It's not just about talent or hard work, it's about cultivating the right mindset, embracing the challenges, and committing to this lifelong journey of learning and growth.
And remember, mastery is not reserved for a select few. It's a path that's open to anyone who's willing to put in the time and effort.
So if you're feeling inspired to pursue mastery in your own life, start by identifying your life's task, that thing that truly lights you up,
Find a mentor, immerse yourself in deep practice.
and never stop learning and growing.
And most importantly, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into mastery. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.